The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
The rulers sneered at Jesus and said, "He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the chosen one of the Christ of God." Even the soldiers jeered at him. As they approached to offer him wine, they called out, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." Above him there was an inscription that read, "This is the King of the Jews." Now one of the criminals hanging there reviled Jesus, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." The other, however, rebuked him and said in reply, "Have you no fear of God? For you are subject to the same condemnation. And indeed we have been condemned justly, for the sentence we received corresponds to our crimes. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied to him, "Amen, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord. How many of you remember the weekend of January 9th, 2022? Of course not. I wouldn't expect you to. It was, Saturday was a high of 34. Sunday was high of 19. Kind of like the weather we're having now, maybe. It was the last day of the NFL regular season, and the Lions won for their third win last season against Green Bay. It also happens to have been the first Sunday after the Christmas season. So the first Sunday in the church year after Advent and Christmas. We don't call it the first Sunday of the year. We call it the baptism of the Lord. And then from then until today, not including Lent and Easter, there are 34 Sundays, and this is the last Sunday of the year. So we've gone full circle. From the baptism of the Lord, the time that he began his public ministry, you could say, until today when we read about his crucifixion. And all those times, all those Sundays, like I said, except for Lent and Easter, we've been listening to the Gospel of Luke, often called the good physician. People think that he might have been a doctor because his Gospel is very compassionate. There's a number of Jesus' healing stories in there. He's always talking about how we should be kind to one another. And a lot of the Gospels talk about Jesus instructing his disciples, what they should do, how they should act, what they should say, how they should be good disciples. In today's language, rather than instructing, we would probably use the word formation. If anybody's in the seminary to become a priest or a brother, or in the sisters in the convent, they're in formation, because formation is not just teaching, it's also instructing them on how they should act and how they should behave, and how so this year we've been listening to the Gospel of Luke about being good disciples, being formed properly. And in today's Gospel, at the end of Jesus' life, he's talking to what we call the good thief, or the good criminal, if there is such a thing. And the good criminal says to the not so good criminal, keep your mouth shut. We deserve what we're getting. This man doesn't. And Jesus makes the promise, today you will be with me in paradise. And those are the words, whether we've ever thought about it or not, that we're going to want to hear at the end of our life. Jesus making the promise, today you will be with me in paradise. And today, we celebrate this 34th, this last Sunday of the church year. We call it Christ the King. I was talking to a priest, one of the priests that we lived together, and he said, I never know what to preach about on Christ the King. We don't have kings in the United States. No, we don't know what it means to live under a king. We have presidents that we elect. We're a democracy. We see the Queen of England or the King of England or whatever, but we don't really understand. And so I did some more research. This holy day, or this feast, was only started about 100 years ago by Pope Pius XI. It was right after the end of the First World War. So I'm sure none of us were around then, well, maybe. But, and Europe was really devastated. There were some dictators that were starting to take over. Italy had Mussolini, Russia had Stalin, Hitler was starting to get popular, and so the people were even more depressed. They didn't know who to trust. They didn't know what kind of leader to turn to. Maybe we're in the same situation nowadays, I don't know. So the Pope decided to remind everybody, making this feast, Christ is our King. Christ is the one that we trust. Christ is the one that we should be always looking to. And we've just finished another kind of nasty political season, and they seem to get longer and nastier all the time, and I just can't, and we're always on one side or another. We try not to be, but we are. We pick sides. And then I was asking myself this week, to whom are we loyal? Are we loyal to this person or to this person or to this ideology or to this idea? No, we need to be loyal and put our loyalties to Jesus. That's the most important thing. We celebrate Christ the King. We celebrated this whole year. We celebrated Jesus forming us, teaching us, instructing us, leading us on how to be good disciples. And then today we celebrate that last act of humility, because our King is not a king of great strength and power in this world. He's a king of humility. The king who allowed himself to be killed on the cross for us. And if we throw our loyalty in that direction, and don't forget about throwing our loyalty in that direction, rather than in other directions, we can probably be sure that we will hear, today you will be with me in paradise.